Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carruth Writer speaking, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2019 biopic sports comedy drama titled Fighting with My Family. Now, Fighting with My Family runs for 1 hour and 48 minutes long, and it was directed by Stephen Merchant. It is produced by Kevin Misher, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Danny Garcia, Stephen Merchant, and Michael J. Luisi. The script was written by Stephen Merchant, and it is based on the book Wrestling Families, Fighting with My Family by Max Fisher. Now, the score was done by Vic Sharma and Graham Coxon. The cinematography by Remy Adafarasin, and it was edited by Nancy Richardson. And the stars of this movie are Florence Pugh, Lena Headey, Nick Frost, Jack Lowden, Vince Vaughn, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, James Burrows, Hannah Ray, Thea Trinidad, who is also known in the wrestling business as Selena Vega, the valet manager of WWE United States Champion Andrade. Also, there's Kid Matula, Aquila Zoll, Eli Gonzalez, Stephen Merchant, and Julia Davis. So, Fighting with My Family looks into the comical and yet inspiring journey of Saraya Beavis, who of course is known in the wrestling business as Paige, who climbs out of her family's independent promotion in Norwich, England, to become a WWE superstar. She would become a trailblazer for today's women's wrestlers, who are known for their equally competitive edge as the men, and are not treated like glorified sex symbols like they were in the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era. So now we have the women wrestlers fighting in more heavy-handed type of matches that could expand for something like 15 to 20 minutes, 25 minutes, equally on an equally competitive edge, just like the men. And they could be fighting in more hardcore type of matches, like Hell in the Cell, Steel Cage, Elimination Chamber, tables, ladders, and chairs. And they're not going to be fighting in these like softcore porn type of matches, like lingerie pillow fights, paddle on a pole, bra and panty matches. I mean, those matches are fucking sick and very, very degrading. But now, women in wrestling are known for their athleticism rather than for their seductive beauty. Sure, there are women wrestlers out there that are attractive, but that's not their priority. Their priority is their athletic skill, and they're treated with a little more respect and dignity like the male wrestlers. And in a way, that's kind of a bit of a milestone. And Paige made that transformation with her different look, different style, and just being regard it as a woman who plays the drum to a different beat. Although the focus of the story is based on Paige's incredible climb to the top of a major wrestling company like the WWE, it still feels like writer-director Stephen Merchant is taking this simplified tale in a formulaic direction of a sports underdog story of an individual who has to go against the odds, the prejudices, and the trials and tribulations to make it to the top of the company, or at least to reach her fullest potential. It has to work through these speed bumps in order to get there. Now, even though WWE CEO Vince McMahon is not listed in the credits of producers, there is still no apologies that the self-promoting of this billion-dollar company is so frequent, it could also be quite monotonous at times. It's like as though it wants to continually endorse its promotion like no other promotion matters, which is totally not true. I mean, there are other promotions out there besides the WWE. You know, many people don't even get to wrestle in the WWE. There's AEW, there's Ring of Honor, there's Impact Wrestling, New Japan, All Japan Pro Wrestling. There's promotions in Mexico, Europe. I mean, anybody can wind up at any place and would consider it a dream come true. Or some people spend their entire career on the indie scene, and they seem to be happy in that zone. So the WWE is not the be-all to end-all. But here, they make it seem like you're either a WWE superstar or you're nothing. Or at least not of significance. The movie follows a similar path to Rocky as we watch Saraya, played by Florence Pugh, break free from the shackles of her hometown in Norwich, England, before taking on the persona of her gothic-themed character Paige, and challenges herself as a legitimate superstar in the WWE. Even though it's a sincere biopic, Merchant does make this film dependent on funny quips and hilarious one-liners to provide a little laughter for the tough road ahead of her, which actually works to great effect, since we need a little humor for this tough, heavy-handed road ahead. The cliched tropes that come into the story are in full force. We have the tough but fair Hutch Morgan, played with humor and charm and by Vince Vaughn. There is musical montages that carries into full effect while she's training, which seems to happen in a lot of these kind of movies. And then there's the climactic battle in the ring that is supposed to be the attention grabber. However, it kind of feels a little bit off, and it doesn't really have that heavy climax. And sure, it lists Paige's triumphs quite nicely. They tend to forget and skim through the hardships and scandals she's faced over the years. Such things like the failed drug test that temporarily got her fired from the WWE, her estranged relationship with former WWE superstar Alberto Del Rio, the leaked sex video, and the botched wrestling move by Sasha Banks that resulted in ending her wrestling career at the only age of 24. Everything depicted in this film seems like her journey was too immaculately displayed and seems so unnaturally happy-go-lucky that everything just comes at her without repercussions. Everything just seems to fold in a nice little tiny package. And it seems like she just gets by with things so easily, when really in the end, just like many wrestlers before and after her, they're still human beings. And they had to also overcome a lot of scandals, trials, and tribulations to make it where they are, which could lead to their road to success and their ultimately to utter defeat. So she's no better than any other wrestler, but they treat her like everything just comes at her naturally, with no repercussions, with no setbacks. It's just way too neat to be believable. It always helps give viewers in watching Fighting with My Family, mainly due to the trailer that is mostly displayed by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and selling the product directly at us. I'll take these earphones off. See how it works. With his charismatic catchphrases and his poetic diatribes, this will surely get viewers to see this movie. Even though he has creative control serving as an executive producer, his role here is generally just a glorified cameo. You know, he comes on, he does his usual promos, you know, dissing and putting down Saraya and her brother. And, you know, his usual stick that made him a mega superstar during the Ruthless Aggression era and the Attitude era. You know, he used to bring his blend of comedy and his 20-minute dialogue and his catchphrases, which usually often electrified the crowd. Sure, they were raunchy. Sure, they were a little over the top. And sure, he often talked a lot about his pies and his strudels. And then, of course, you know, taking things, shining it nicely, turning it sideways and sticking it up your candy asses. What's your name? My name. It doesn't matter what your name is. You know, those kind of things he used to say in the ring. He does that during that whole trailer. So at first glance, many people will think this movie is about him. Well, he's not really in it that often. And he's not playing a character or anything like that. He is just being himself, The Rock. Entertaining the millions and the millions of The Rock's fans. If you smell what The Rock is cooking. I can't do the eyebrow raising. But he's not the main star in this movie. Like I said, it's just a cameo that he's in. The main performer in this movie is Florence Pugh as the aforementioned Paige, who transformed the wrestling ring into her house. Pugh has shown some strong performances in her young career in movies like Lady Macbeth and Little Drummer Girl. But she doesn't come alone in this movie. She also is backed up by a strong cast of supporting characters. Some are played for comical moments, some are played for dramatical moments, and some of them are like somewhere here in between. The strong comical moments seem to be from performers like Lena Headey as her mother, Julia, and comic actor Nick Frost, who also starred in another vehicle by Stephen Merchant called Hot Fuzz. He also plays some great comic relief as her father, Ricky. Vince kind of balances between comedy and drama in his performance as tough coach Hutch Morgan in one of his more stronger performances in a very, very long time. But the most dramatic performance in this movie comes from Jack Lowden, who gives a more dramatic side to the story as Soraya's brother Zach, whose jealousy and depression for failing to make the cut had an effect on not only himself but his family as well, even his own sister Paige. When she got in to become a future WWE superstar, at the Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. She tried to express some empathy towards him and feeling that, but at least, she didn't show like any signs of like self-centered egoness, like, haha, I got in, you didn't. No, she actually also wanted her brother to make the cut and become a WWE superstar, but unfortunately, Morgan made his decision, and his decision was finalized. So, whereas Saraya, aka Paige, is going to become a WWE superstar in the future, Zach is just going to have to face the facts that he's going to have to go back to London. But it wasn't because he performed badly. No, he actually performed just as good as his sister. But the only reason why Mr. Morgan, Coach Morgan, let him go was simply because back home in England, Zach has a pregnant wife. And he just wanted him to go back to England to care for his wife and to be close to his child. But Paige tries to do everything in her powers to become a WWE superstar, although it's not easy. As I mentioned before, she had to go through rigorous training. And aside from training, she also had to develop a character for herself. Something that kind of stands out, something that's a little different from the monotony. Such things includes learning how to do a promo, learning how to respond to interviews with her own different style of character and personality. It's not just based on wrestling skill alone. You have to become a character. If it works, then you're pretty much set for life. But if it fails, you're going to be underused and underutilized. And that's kind of just how the things go in wrestling. It's not just learning how to do moves. You also have to be somebody. You have to dress a certain way, look a certain way to get people's attention. You have to develop a personality. It's not just based on moves alone. And she also had to struggle with that too. Of course, she also had to face her deal of prejudices as well because of the fact that a lot of women wrestlers, prior to 2015 were pretty much one-dimensional and the same. All a bunch of tanned up beach bum blondes. And then you have Paige, who's kind of looks like she spends her summer vacations in a cave. She's all gothic, complete with albino skin features and black hair. She kind of could pass off for looking like Elmira's illegitimate daughter. Or she looks like a younger version of Morticia Adams. Or if Morticia Adams and Lily Munster had a daughter, that would be Paige. So, and of course, she's going to be faced with those prejudices, and also because of the fact that because she's from Britain, she's going to sound differently too. So one day, before training at the performance center, she even just goes out, dyes her hair blonde, tans her skin, and just tries to blend in. But then Coach Morgan says to her, "I actually liked you better the way you were." And in some kind of absurd turn, she goes back to being the gothic girl again. So, there are a few plot holes somewhere not very well paved in. But it does mark for something quite interesting and provocative. The opening scenes, in which the emphasis is on the dynamics of Paige and her family of traveling wrestlers who run a promotion in her native Norwich, England. Her family is obsessed with wrestling, and as the youngest and the only daughter, she has to prove herself even harder so she can accomplish bigger things in life. Her father is a very flawed individual, being that he was an ex-con, and after several years of doing jobs he just couldn't keep, he found his calling, running wrestling tours where his family are the main attraction. Call it nepotism, but to Paige, this is probably opportunity, not necessarily nepotism. He also runs a training school for wrestlers to build their strength and character, and his son also teaches there as well. The opening scenes are as real as they are hilarious, and by the film starts to fizzle out once Paige gets chosen to wrestle for NXT in hopes to be on the main roster and to be a part of either the two WWE weekly branded shows, either Raw or SmackDown. She could be, but first, she has to start off in NXT before building her way to either wrestling in the main roster of Raw or SmackDown. Like a lot of young developers in that promotion. Although, it's probably not all entirely true because there are also veteran performers who had to also fight in NXT before moving up to the main roster. And a lot of these guys were in their 30s and maybe even pushing near 40. Guys like Samoa Joe, Roderick Strong, Tommaso Ciampa, they're pretty much almost like in the 40 age club. But they also had to start off in NXT before being called up to join the main rosters, which is either Raw or SmackDown. The movie also, in spite of somewhat over-the-topness in comedy, with also some over-the-topness in drama, the sibling squabbles between Paige and Zack are definitely believable, as Zack feels that his world was crushed when he didn't get signed, and it leads him to falling into a state of depression. You feel really bad for this guy. All this hard work that he put into becoming a WWE superstar, his one and only chance of a lifetime, crushed. Well, at least, he feels that he faced a reality check, but at the same, this could have been a reality check that maybe even he felt he didn't deserve. So this kind of leads to him in a perpetual state of depression. And you really feel bad for him. It's just too bad that this dramatic side of the story is just an afterthought that would have been fleshed out a whole lot more. And I was expecting that to happen. In fact, sometimes I think his dramatic story has much more of a more serious effect than Paige's trials and tribulations of branching out on her own at a very young age. You know, the homesickness, the prejudices, the feeling of being, of the feeling of wanting to be accepted but still being held back, the opportunities of a lifetime. The question is, will it make her or will it break her? Leaves definitely a lot of fans into the lurch. But it's Zack's simple story of him failing the WWE cut, having to go back to England, face the consequences, and just not being particularly interested in the wrestling scene anymore, since he feels that not getting into the WWE means that he feels like a failure. And I wish this would have been fleshed out much, much more. Paige's sage advice to her brother about believing in yourself and being proud of the skin you own seems like it was recited out of an old self-confident manual. And although, like I said, her opportunity is not based primarily on ego, in fact, sometimes I think maybe she even feels that her audition was just a stroke of luck. But at least it's good to know that even she knows it too, and doesn't hold any kind of ill will against her brother. There is a lot of genuine love for her and her brother, so it's not egotism or self-centeredness towards her character, and we truly feel for her. We feel bad for Zack, but at least we know that, she is overall likable. Most of the characters in this movie, at the most, seem to come across as being likable. Maybe a few minor antagonists, but there really is no battle between good or evil. It's just about trying to reach your fullest potential and going out there, not trying to be like anybody else, but being your own person, being your own creative self. And though the movie as a whole is likable, it can be at times formulaic and way too squeaky clean at times. And although Pugh delivers the best performance as WWE superstar Paige, the comical elements in the story can be too frequent and leaves the dramatic stuff way too underdeveloped. WWE's banter is definitely fully protected, that it heavily relies on its product placement, even though it's great that they acknowledge that wrestling is predetermined. They do seem to spare the details. I know it's because they don't want to make it obvious. I can probably understand that, but they have to sort of realize that wrestling, although it's not fake, it is predetermined, it is orchestrated. People know who's going to win and what. We all know that. But at the same time, it's not about who, it's more about what will happen. That's what makes things interesting. Also, in Paige's first match, it feels like it was unscripted, but I have plenty of reasons to doubt. Like the sport itself, it may make you think that it's all real, only to realize not everything in the world of sports entertainment appears like you would expect. It's always the unexpectedness and the unpredictability that usually spreads a lot of the drama in the wrestling business. Maybe even more so today with social media, kind of like taking over, leaking rumors, leaking predictions and stuff like that, and how things are going to go about and how things are going to be rounded out. And people seem to know ahead of time what is to come. But at the same time, things do change, cards change. Things don't always go as planned right away. Sometimes it may even take to the 11th hour to finally get the final outcome of what is to happen. I mean, take for example, like this year's WrestleMania 36, We were supposed to see The Rock versus Bill Goldberg for the WWE Universal Champion. That didn't happen. Instead, it was Braun Strowman. And yet the build up, prior to, COVID-19 happened. So we never really got that. And it's these kind of things is where it is not fake. And people should realize that fake is a bit dismissive to describe wrestling. Predetermined would probably be the better word. And just like the movie, there are weaknesses in this movie, but it doesn't deter the spirit of the movie or the effort. It was a fun watch. It was entertaining. The final scenes where she took on AJ Lee, which was really actually just Zelina Vega pretending to be AJ Lee when we clearly knew that was not AJ Lee. Maybe they could have even took a non-wrestler or maybe some wrestler to look like AJ Lee to actually face her when it was pretty obvious that that was Zelina Vega. They could have easily had somebody to look like AJ Lee or even dress like her. So we kind of feel a bit cheated out. The inspirational package that seems to come with Paige's promo tends to be very, very long-winded. But it was a good watch. I mean, the good definitely outweighs the bad. I still highly recommend it. If you're a wrestling fan, if you're a fan of Paige, or if you're a fan of women's wrestling, then I highly recommend you to see this movie. If I was to give it a scale out of 10, I would give Fighting with My Family a 6. Not the worst movie I've ever seen. Still a lot of good stuff about this movie. A little bit of continuity and anachronism problems, but still very, very effective in its storytelling. And I guess that's pretty much all I have to say. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Karate Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.